The girl who transmigrated into a book personally raised a psychotic young boy, who grew up to become the male lead that would destroy her entire family. To survive, she secretly showed him warmth, using her golden eyes that could see through others' emotions. She tamed the male lead into a praise-seeking, two-faced puppy. Sirius, born in the form of a wolf cub, was the royal family's once-in-a-millennium werewolf incarnation, and the greatest threat to the crown prince's ascension. So the crown prince raised an army in rebellion and seized the throne, but he unable to overthrow the royal legends. He threw Sirius into prison and tortured him day and night. 10 years later, he sent Sirius to the madman's den to fend for himself, watching the luxurious carriage stop at the entrance. Elena ignored the provocative siblings. She walked straight back to her room. In this villainous family, 7 children killed each other for status, after the eldest, second, third sister, and sixth brother died one by one. The cold-blooded father not only mocked their incompetence, but cruelly ordered the children to abandon their emotions. Having read the script, she had already thought of a strategy. The family's destruction had nothing to do with her. She just needed to do nothing. Stay invisibly by the male lead's side, find the right moment, and secretly escape. She had barely fallen asleep when Sirius's voice came from outside the door. She suddenly realized the door wasn't properly closed. Elena quickly covered her mouth, unless absolutely necessary. She didn't want to meet the male lead so soon. After the footsteps gradually faded, she tiptoed to the door, just as she was about to close it. The door was suddenly pulled open. Elena lost her balance completely and fell straight into Sirius's arms. The two little ones stared at each other. It was over. Her carefully made plan was ruined. But looking closer, she found Sirius was indeed quite pleasing to the eye. The original novel mentioned he had killed dozens of fiancés with this face, eventually becoming a bloodthirsty maniac. Elena immediately pretended to be pitiful and apologized, as she prepared to slowly retreat to her room. Sirius grabbed her hand and wouldn't let go. "You're very beautiful." He spoke complimentary words, but his face remained expressionless. Because of the girl's black hair and golden eyes, Sirius immediately guessed. She was the youngest daughter of the Rhodes family. He tilted his head to look at the room behind her, brazenly examining the surroundings. The room had neither a soft pink bed, nor cute toys studded with gems. All of this showed her status in the Duke's household was very low. Actually, Elena had once owned such a princess room, but now those things all belonged to Courtney. However, she preferred her current attic, because if she wanted to gain power, she had to prove her abilities to the Duke. When she came back to her senses, she found Sirius had been staring at her. Her answers were quite articulate. Her mind seemed fine. Sirius said to her, "It seems you're useless." After saying this, he turned and left. Among the Rhodes family treasures, the most precious were the golden eyes. And Elena's eyes were purer than anyone else's. But compared to the invulnerable Duke, she appeared weak and timid, so she had no utility value whatsoever. Soon, the Duke called a family meeting. He would serve as Sirius's teacher. Therefore, His Highness would receive education here together with them. The siblings eagerly blessed their father. The atmosphere became suffocating. Sirius remained very calm. Elena was quite surprised. These gem-like brilliant golden eyes had the ability to see through others' emotions. But until now, she hadn't detected any emotional fluctuations from him. The Duke maintained his usual arrogant demeanor. He opened by warning Sirius to behave himself, facing such intimidation. Sirius remained completely unmoved, instead giving an impeccable response. Feeling bored, the Duke prepared to leave. When he walked past his youngest daughter, he couldn't help but frown and say, "Useless thing." Elena clutched her clothes tightly, she constantly comforting herself that it didn't matter. As soon as the Duke left, Courtney went to Sirius and deliberately provoked him. A prince with no one to rely on, everyone wanted to step on him, but surely Sirius wouldn't let her bully him. Although Elena was curious about what would happen next. If she got involved, it would be troublesome. Sneaking away at this moment was the wise choice, but as soon as she left, Sirius followed behind her. Hearing footsteps, Elena turned around. Why was he following her? This immediately angered the sister who was being ignored by Sirius. Sirius suddenly grabbed Elena's arm and wouldn't let go. Standing there without saying a word, Elena looked back toward her sister. She saw Courtney glowing red all over, frightening her into immediately looking away. This was the emotion of anger. Courtney pointed at the trembling Elena and mocked. "So you want to win her over to oppose me?" The fifth brother nearby kept sneering. "This stupid parasite. If father hadn't ordered us not to touch her, he would have dug out those golden eyes long ago." This brought back bad memories for Elena. Father had once said the same thing to her, so every time she heard it, she would habitually close her eyes tightly, noticing the girl's helplessness. Sirius remained silent for a long time, until Courtney brazenly called him by name. Sirius immediately emanated a gray glow. This was the color representing irritation. "Who allowed you to treat me so rudely?" Even the Duke only dared change his form of address with my permission. The always domineering sister was left speechless. If her answer was slightly wrong, she would be suspected of insulting her father. This was Elena's first time seeing Courtney being bullied. Her helpless appearance was truly pitiful. Afterward, Sirius dragged Elena away, although she didn't understand why. At least they were safely out of there. After leaving the room, both finally relaxed their guard. Elena breathed a sigh of relief. She had to get back to the attic quickly before those crazy siblings came out. But the boy kept following her. This was really driving her crazy. At first, Elena thought it was her imagination, but he had been following her for 20 minutes. What was he doing in such a rundown place? She couldn't possibly bring him to her room. Elena gathered courage and turned to ask, "Tell me, why do you keep following me?" Seeing the boy panic for a moment, she repeated, "If you keep walking this way, you'll reach the attic where I live." "I know." Elena stomped her feet in frustration. Sirius suddenly glowed with white light. This was clearly the color of happiness. He looked expressionless on the surface, but was inwardly trying not to laugh. Elena hurriedly ran away, but turning around, she found Sirius had actually chased after her. She asked breathlessly, "Didn't you say you wouldn't follow me anymore?" Sirius grabbed the door handle of the adjacent room. "I never said I was always following you." The misunderstanding made Elena blush, seeing the girl standing still. Sirius asked if she had anything else to say. Elena's face turned red to her ears. She left a quick goodnight and immediately fled to her room. After the door slammed shut, Sirius murmured, "You too." Elena at that moment buried her head in her pillow. She tossed and turned in bed. This was really embarrassing. Father was too much, no matter what. She was still his daughter. How could he let a strange man live next door to his daughter? But on second thought, if Father really cared about her, that would be scary. The bullying from her siblings over the years all had his tacit approval. She remembered when she was just born. Father had a different attitude toward her, but Elena understood even then. The famously vicious, cold-blooded Duke could never smile so kindly. The man muttered, "She is perfect." After naming his daughter Elena, he even thoughtfully instructed the maids to take good care of her. Clearly in the novel, the Duke was very strict with his children. Why did he give her special care? She thought it was a healing story of a tyrant father being moved. But it turned out to be Father's covetousness for his daughter's golden eyes. In the past, Father was always surrounded by white light. But today, it had become suffocating black. Elena instinctively wanted to flee, but before she could react, she was tightly gripped by those large hands around her throat. Before losing consciousness, she vaguely heard, "If you're born with Rhodes' golden eyes, you should have learned to hide earlier." From then on, Father tested her many times, just to test her abilities. The book didn't mention any related content, so facing threat after threat, Elena still maintained a bright smile. Only because she was afraid to admit that the father who once loved her deeply was always this kind of person. Only now did she realize the Duke had never treated her as a daughter, but merely treasured those golden eyes. In the end, she became a Feyren eliminated from the game. Elena comforted herself to endure a little longer. Anyway, she would soon be destroyed by Sirius, but she really hadn't seen for a long time. That kind of aura emitted purely from happiness. Elena quietly moved to the wall, curiously pressing against it to eavesdrop. She thought he had gone to sleep early, but heard sounds of crying from next door. Elena thought she was hallucinating. She immediately stood up from the bed in shock. That person with no emotional fluctuations who would rule the world, the Emperor, was actually crying. What should she do now? Should she comfort him? But thinking about it carefully, he was only 10 years old. Elena's heart was filled with conflict. No, even if she felt uncomfortable, there was nothing she could do. She had to stick to the plan. Don't do anything, but thinking of him all alone, with only herself able to have normal conversations with him. Comforting him a little should be fine, right? With this thought, she walked out the door. The next second, she ran back to her room. If any variables appeared, it might change the original situation. And if she went to comfort him, it would admit to eavesdropping. As a result, the next day, she had nightmares about she was being stabbed by conscience. She put on clothes and prepared to go out for breakfast. But as soon as she opened the door, the dramatic scene played out again. Only this time she didn't fall into his arms. Sirius sat on the windowsill staring straight at her. Elena wondered, could he be waiting for her? Elena timidly greeted him. "Did you sleep well last night?" After getting a response, she quietly moved her feet. Glancing back, Sirius was again emanating colorful light. His mood seemed quite good, seeing her leave on her own. Sirius silently followed behind her. Yesterday's pressure was too strong, she hadn't looked carefully. Now she realized the just awakened Sirius looked like a dandelion. The two came to the dining room together. As expected, there wasn't a single person inside. Elena was already used to this, in this crazy family. Even meals were hierarchical. People like her without ability could only eat last. The aroma of tomato soup wafted to her nose. Elena was about to run to get food, but was grabbed by Sirius. Noble dining had servants to serve food, so he didn't understand where the girl was going. Elena was stunned for a second. Rather than explain here, she preferred to help the boy adapt, looking at the bowl of tomato soup. The boy thought the food here was simple but good. Elena felt inexplicably heartbroken. How badly had the royal family treated him before? But when she was about to eat, the boy stared at her intently. "Why aren't you eating? Do you have a grudge against the food?" So Elena added, "Enjoy your meal." After the same response, the boy began eating. Come to think of it, earlier too. Why did he have to hear her greet him? Could he be a greeting elf? Although his current sparkling appearance did indeed look a bit like a little elf, but he was still a young beast, who would even retaliate against family members, who hated him, unlike herself back then, who only knew how to cling foolishly. Elena was born weak and sickly. Whenever she was about to die from illness, the brutal duke would find doctors, so the servants decided to treat her like air, except for occasional bullying from her siblings. No one would talk to her. So Elena was like a living ghost. Therefore, she would never miss such interesting scenes. Little Sirius burst out with amazing power. The flying debris nearly hit heads. The legendary wolf incarnation possessed broader vision than humans and animal instincts. In everyone's eyes, you were a monster. Even Courtney couldn't help but exclaim, "What a madman." But the Duke was very dissatisfied. "Is this all you can show me? Absolutely terrible." After saying this, he ordered his men to bring over sword practice equipment. He personally demonstrated a perfect set of moves. When it was Sirius's turn, in less than a second, he had chopped the equipment to pieces. The Duke stepped forward, truly barbaric and crude. Then he raised his hand. A heavy slap fell. Elena immediately collapsed to the ground, trembling all over. Over the years, she had witnessed too many violent scenes by the Duke's side. Now just watching from the sidelines made her feel terrified. That evening, she touched her growling stomach. She really regretted not eating dinner. Suddenly there was a loud crash from next door, followed by sounds of pain. In the novel, the Emperor had tactfully instructed the Duke to cruelly torture Sirius. It didn't matter if he died. Thinking of this, Elena immediately jumped out of bed, although protagonists couldn't easily die. What if this wasn't the case? She immediately rushed out of her room, constantly telling herself this wasn't because of guilt, but because Sirius was her insurance. She knocked on the door, but there was no response from inside. If she just barged in, she might be remembered by Sirius. He was very wary of people who were unreasonably kind to him, but after much hesitation, she finally opened the door. When she walked to the bedside, Elena was shocked by the scene before her, looking at Sirius tortured beyond recognition by Father. She covered her mouth in horror. Moving closer, she found Sirius's breathing was weak. When she touched his forehead, she was burned. He had a high fever of 90 degrees. Without time to think, she hurried back to her room, rummaging for medicine and towels, then carrying a small bucket of water. She efficiently rolled up her sleeves, using all her strength to turn the boy over. Sirius's injuries, large and small, were fully exposed. There wasn't a single good spot on his body. He had to reduce the fever first. Elena gently wiped away his cold sweat, afraid of touching the torn wound at the corner of his mouth. She fed him fever-reducing medicine. Soon after, Sirius's temperature gradually dropped. Then applying ointment to the boy, she carefully reduced the pressure, trying not to cause the boy too much pain. Seeing tears slide down Sirius's cheeks, Elena felt inexplicably heartbroken. Elena lay by the bedside, gently holding his hand. Only then did Sirius's crying slowly subside. Near dawn, Elena quietly returned to her room. The next morning when she opened her door, Sirius was sitting at the door waiting for her as usual, after getting the desired good morning greeting. Sirius still stared at her intently. He asked, "Why did you come out late today?" Elena casually made up an excuse, but Sirius's expression clearly showed disbelief. She asked why he was asking this. Sirius suddenly avoided the topic, just asking casually, "Let's go eat quickly." Elena was full of question marks. Had she been discovered? Although she was the prime suspect, he had no evidence. After all, he hadn't opened his eyes all night. He was so seriously injured yesterday. Today he was acting like nothing happened, perhaps because he was a werewolf incarnation. His recovery was extraordinary. After eating, Sirius brought her to the training ground. Sirius turned to Elena and said, "Wait here for me to finish practicing." Although Elena was extremely dissatisfied, she only dared think about it. But she wouldn't obediently listen. She was someone with her own opinions. Elena asked quietly, "By the chance, can I wait over there?" She didn't want to see Father. Seeing the girl trembling, Sirius said whatever. Great. Elena immediately headed for the grove. After sitting down, she breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he agreed, although his expression was exactly the same as when they first met. But she just wanted to be useless. Wasn't it nice to sit comfortably in the protagonist's ride? Thinking about it, she fell into dreams. After a long time, a bloody smell hit her nose. She saw the blood-covered Sirius, slowly reaching out to her. Elena was somewhat at a loss. Did he want her to hold his hand? Elena hesitated for a moment, then was grabbed by Sirius. She was too scared to breathe. Sirius noticed the girl's face was pale. Her hand kept fidgeting. Sirius thought it was because his hand was too cold. Actually, it was Elena's body's instinct to flee, but she couldn't tell the truth. She wanted to say something random, but it came out as "I want to pat your head, because you did well." After realizing it, Elena herself thought it was a ridiculous excuse. But Sirius believed it. He knelt down, covered in blood, seeking praise, looking at his sincere expression seeking praise. Elena tremblingly raised her hand, stroking Sirius's head. Well done. But how long did she have to keep patting? Her hand was getting sore. Speaking of which, the blood on him didn't look like his own, Sirius explained casually. The Duke had him spar with magical beasts. Without looking, she could imagine. It must have been a beast-like battle, coming back to her senses. Sirius kept staring at Elena. He hesitated for a long time as if he had something to ask, but suddenly frowned, got up and left abruptly, although it was annoying. At least she was free. Elena touched her longed-for bed. Now she could sleep peacefully. However, a few days later, in a sparring match, before the timer ended, Joseph began attacking Sirius. He barely managed to block the sword. But the Duke didn't stop this rule violation. As a result, he was caught off guard. The sharp sword directly pierced Sirius's ribs. Looking at Sirius suffering on the bed, Elena was worried sick. Yes, she was here again. She lifted Sirius's clothes to look. Although he was bandaged, the technique was poor, blood was seeping out. Elena knew she shouldn't act so rashly, because in a few years Sirius would kill the entire family. But even if he was the protagonist, infection could still kill him. Didn't you say you would definitely get revenge? So you can't just die like this. Elena was about to go back to get more gauze, when a hand suddenly grabbed her. Looking back, Sirius was still conscious. Those eyes seemed to be asking why. Elena sensed danger approaching, but her hand wanting to escape was held tightly. It was over. She couldn't think of a decent excuse for why she was here. Better to run first, but with a pull. Elena fell right onto Sirius. Fortunately, she turned around in time and didn't hit his wound. But this was too close. Going all out, Elena suddenly covered his eyes, murmuring, "You're just dreaming." Hearing this, Sirius was stunned. Then he chuckled, surrounded by colorful light. Though this excuse was absurd, she could only stubbornly hypnotize Sirius. She kept repeating this was a dream that would be forgotten by morning. The boy kept trying not to laugh, but soon there was no sound. His tight grip slowly loosened. Even Elena couldn't believe it. He actually fell asleep. Did she have a talent for hypnosis? Anyway, she had temporarily gotten through the crisis, but Sirius's face was still very pale. Elena applied ointment for him, then changed to clean gauze. Mission accomplished, she just had to wait for him to destroy the family and then escape. The sooner the better. Otherwise, if Sirius devoured her, it would be over. Fortunately, she had golden eyes that could see through emotions. As soon as she sensed something wrong, she would immediately flee. But unexpectedly, just one day later, things were already very wrong. Clearly, blood had seeped through the gauze, dripping onto his feet. But Sirius still greeted her as usual, and strangest of all, why was he so happy despite being injured? Could he be testing her? Elena quietly slowed her pace, preparing to find a chance to slip away. But Sirius actually stopped to wait for her. Having no choice, she had to follow obediently. Sirius suddenly turned and asked her, "Do you have something to say?" Elena hurriedly denied it. Her limbs also began moving awkwardly. Seeing this, Sirius chuckled. Arriving at the dining room, Sirius unusually served her soup. With expectant little eyes, he said, "Enjoy your meal." Elena was very confused. Why wasn't he guarding against her? Did he really take last night as a dream? Just then, the door suddenly opened. Servants pushed in a cart. This was the delicious food the Duke prepared for Sirius. This meant he had gained the Duke's approval. Looking at the crispy outside, tender inside steak, Elena unconsciously drooled. She quickly wiped her mouth. Better finish her portion quickly. Unexpectedly, Sirius handed over a piece of cut steak. Elena was dumbfounded, but she felt if she didn't eat it, he would keep staring at her. There was no reason not to eat food delivered to her mouth. After swallowing, Elena's eyes immediately lit up, worthy of being top-grade steak. Seeing this, Sirius smiled knowingly. He said to Elena, "I dreamed of you last night. Come to think of it, this isn't the first time I've dreamed of you. Last time in my dream, you held my hand." Elena nervously broke into a cold sweat. She didn't know how to respond. She stole a glance at the boy. This seemed to be the first time they had talked so much. After being shy for a while, Elena asked what kind of dream he had. The boy was silent for a long time. Just a good dream. Strange, that couldn't have been a good dream. Could he be speaking in riddles? After saying this, Sirius continued feeding Elena. Elena was troubled for a long time. She accepted the delicious dessert. pouting as she stuffed it in her mouth. Sirius was amused by her reaction. That expression seemed to say, "You won't tell me about the dream properly, you just keep feeding me food." How could someone write all their thoughts on their face? But his answer was indeed sincere, although coming here was initially a nightmare for him. In the end, it fulfilled his heart's desire. In his past days, he knowingly the food was poisoned, still ate them, because he was too hungry. Gradually, this became his daily routine. That ordinary life became his long-held wish, greeting each other in the morning, eating safe meals together, playing and studying with peers, sleeping peacefully at night. If he could hear a good night, that would be even better. With a trembling heart, he welcomed the new life to come. But this wish vanished the moment he saw the Duke. It turned out he went from hell to another abyss. No matter where he was, his situation was always the same. From the beginning, he shouldn't have had expectations. However, just then, he met a girl. She had shining golden eyes, looked more like the Duke than anyone, yet was the least Duke-like child. Her name was Elena. Many interesting things happened between them. Sirius just wanted to return to his room, but Elena mistook him for stalking. He found it amusing, so he teased her a little. As a result, her little face turned red immediately, for some reason. In that moment, he felt very happy, just smiled lightly in his heart. But he was expressionless at the time. Elena definitely wouldn't have known. But after that, the girl blushed as she said goodnight to him. His mood instantly became somewhat subtle. It was the shock of having an abandoned wish suddenly fulfilled. Looking back on the whole day, he had been very unfriendly to her. He rudely peeked at her room and said such impolite things, but the girl still said goodnight to him. Sirius felt somewhat guilty, he silently told himself. Just based on this place was different from the Imperial City. Elena, who was eating, frowned slightly. Just now his mood was very good. How did it suddenly turn to melancholy blue? Was it because he kindly fed her, but she didn't eat with relish? She really couldn't figure out what he was thinking. She was about to drink water to calm herself, but choked because she drank too fast. Sirius immediately stood up. He kept asking if she was okay. Was she uncomfortable anywhere? After saying this, he gently patted her back. Elena waved her hand to explain. "I just drank water too quickly." Sirius couldn't understand it all. But from Elena's perspective, someone who got stabbed in the abdomen, yet was running around the next day was more amazing. Sirius stared at the girl, then looked at his nearly healed wound. Although he had wolf blood, she seemed to be the weakest among ordinary people, but such a weak and helpless girl still wanted to help him. It seemed she didn't know that Sirius remembered everything from the beginning. He used to think there was no such thing as unconditional kindness, but the girl before him had truly shown him kindness, so he wanted to tease the girl again. "Shouldn't you take medicine for choking? I saw you have a lot of medicine in your room." Seeing her panicked reaction, Sirius chuckled. Before Elena could escape, he invited the girl to watch him train. Yes, Elena was here again, because she really couldn't refuse him when he looked so expectant. But looking at it this way, his build was still quite small. What would he look like when he grew up? Probably the kind that would tear people apart. A voice of provocation came from nearby. "Hey, you!" Seeing it was Joseph. Elena retorted loudly without backing down. "What?" Joseph angrily carried firewood. "You came to watch me get punished, didn't you?" Elena snorted. It seemed he had violated sparring rules last time and had to live as a servant these days. Seeing her ignore him, Joseph threw down the firewood and approached step by step. Just as he was about to strike, he saw Elena staring at his back. He suddenly felt a chill behind him. He saw Sirius approaching with a long sword. His eyes faintly revealed killing intent. Joseph couldn't believe it. Was he a monster? How did he recover so quickly? In shock, he grabbed Sirius. Elena quickly covered her eyes. Sirius knew she didn't want to witness bloody scenes, so he only warned Joseph with words. "When did I allow you to be so rude to me? If you have nothing to say, then get lost." Joseph was furious, raising his hand to slap him. "Enough!" Duke Rhodes's voice came. It was over. Elena began trembling uncontrollably upon hearing the Duke's voice, sensing Elena's fear. Sirius stood in front of Elena, trying to give the girl some sense of security. The Duke inquired about the reason for the fight, though he never looked at his daughter throughout. Elena still couldn't stop trembling. In her eyes, the dark aura surrounding the Duke made her instinctively want to flee. After a while, the Duke left with the troublemaker. Only then did Elena breathe a sigh of relief. Sirius suddenly grabbed her hand. "Then let's go," although she wanted to ask where. But she could only follow anyway, might as well be obedient. But what horrified her more was, for a moment, she actually felt more comfortable staying by Sirius's side. In the book, the future him would mercilessly destroy her entire family, the Great Demon King. She knew she shouldn't get too close to him, but somehow, her heart seemed to disobey her. As they walked along, Sirius suddenly turned to face her and asked, "Is there anywhere you want to go?" But after thinking for a long time, Elena didn't know where to go. Sirius put his hands together. He thought of a good idea. "Elena, what do you usually do at this time?" Elena stammered. Read books in the study. Hearing this, Sirius led her toward the study. This made Elena troubled instead. If she stayed with him all day, she might get caught up in the storm. So she made a bold decision, preparing 7 or 8 excuses to decline. She thought it would surely work, but saw Sirius looking dejected with drooping eyebrows, simply adorable to the heart. He was like a stray little wolf eagerly waiting to be taken in. Sirius looked up. "Can I wait outside either?" Elena's heart frantically refused, but her mouth honestly said yes. Getting permission, Sirius smiled happily and responded, "Then I'll wait here," seeing Elena nod with a smile. Sirius praised her for being even cuter when she smiled. After closing the door, Elena's mouth corners unconsciously rose. After realizing it, her mind suddenly became clear. Was she really so defenseless against good looks? She actually surrendered without any resistance. Thinking back now, he was indeed very cute, but she still couldn't let her guard down. After all, that cute Sirius would destroy the entire empire in the future. In the novel, Sirius's childhood was just a small plot used to contrast the future. His childhood was full of suffering and adversity. In such an environment, it made him better at using psychological attacks, harming multiple fiancés, yet still able to get engaged to others again. Even when a woman tried to assassinate him, she hesitated at the crucial moment because she couldn't bear to part with Sirius's peerless beauty. But when Sirius woke up, he cruelly ended her life. Elena hadn't even finished reading one book. Elena glanced toward the door. Surely Sirius wouldn't still be waiting there? She had planned to quietly check if he had left. But then she heard Joseph's voice behind her. She turned around, only to see him surrounded by dark emotions. The more Elena backed away, the closer Joseph pressed forward. He handed her something his father had given to Sirius, asking Elena to help deliver it. But when Elena casually asked what it was, Joseph was angry and about to strike her. Elena quickly covered her head. But what came wasn't a heavy blow, rather a soft touch. She discovered it was Sirius who had blocked the attack, though his face was flushed red. Sirius apologetically said to the girl, "I promised I would wait for you outside." These words struck Elena's heart deeply. She was just about to reach out and touch his head, when Sirius suddenly looked up. He turned around and patted her head comfortingly instead. "Wait here for me." Then he turned and walked straight toward Joseph. Joseph shuddered in fear, not daring to say another word as he tried to flee. Sirius had no intention of letting him go. He hurled the item Joseph had brought at his leg. If he didn't get tough with him, he'd bully Elena again next time. Seeing his panicked apology, Sirius sneered. "What use are such worthless apologies? If I twisted off your limbs, then apologized to you, would you forgive me?" Only then did Elena understand. Sirius wasn't blushing from guilt, but from the heat of his boiling blood. Joseph, kicked to the ground, flew into a rage. He immediately scrambled up and lunged at Sirius, who was 3 years younger, but unexpectedly found his wrist caught in an iron grip. Joseph's arm trembled uncontrollably. The disparity in strength left him unable to move. Joseph tried to maintain his composure, telling Sirius to let go. Hearing this, Sirius scoffed. He flung Joseph away with one motion. How dare he lay a hand on his person? Sirius kicked Joseph a few more times, the study filled only with Joseph's agonized pleas for mercy. Joseph begged tearfully for forgiveness. If his hand was crippled because of this, there would be no place for him in the family anymore. But Sirius suddenly fell quiet. That expression looked like he was calculating how much force to use in torment without making him pass out. Sirius turned to look at Elena. He couldn't just handle things his own way. He still needed to hear Elena's opinion. Elena was already frightened beyond measure. She had witnessed firsthand how the male lead used his cute face to brutally handle someone in a scene of violence, making her feel once again that this was a revenge novel. Who knows when she might die the same way? At this moment, Sirius gently took her hand. He touched her forehead to confirm she wasn't feverish, then asked with concern why her face was so pale. Elena quickly withdrew her hand and said, "I'm just a bit startled." Sirius sighed helplessly. He slowly helped the girl up, pulling her hand to his shoulder, and in one smooth motion carried her on his back. Sirius muttered, "You're really too weak," as he carried her away. Elena struggled with herself for a long time. In the end, she obediently lay against him and accidentally fell asleep. When she got down, she felt embarrassed. She bowed in thanks for what had just happened. Seeing Elena's complexion improve, Sirius finally showed a bright smile. But he really wanted to ask Elena how she wanted him to handle Joseph. Should he go stomp on his wrist again? Elena quickly stopped him. She said Joseph had been punished enough to protect Elena at all times. Sirius made a bold decision. He would take Elena with him to see the Duke. Seeing Elena hesitate, Sirius reached out encouragingly. He understood Elena was very afraid of the Duke, but they had to do this. Even if Elena insisted on not going, he would go alone. Elena had no choice but to agree reluctantly. She wanted to see what the male lead was up to, though Sirius's smiling face still made him impossible to dislike. Just now, the eldest daughter had reported their fight to their father, learning that his son had been beaten helplessly. Rhodes disappointedly picked up an oil lamp and hurled it violently at his daughter. Courtney endured her fear, because only this way could she get the heir's position. But then she heard from her father how wonderful it would be if Sirius were his son. He had never seen a child with such potential. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't bear to eliminate Sirius. Why must he fulfill the Emperor's request? Though the Rhodes family had golden eyes, the Rhodes family had been subservient to the royal family until now. The werewolf incarnation they had waited 300 years for was now essentially attached to the Rhodes family. This was the perfect opportunity, if only his daughter could marry Sirius. Just then, a servant came to report. Prince Sirius and Miss Elena requested an audience. The combination of golden eyes and werewolf bloodline finally made the cold-blooded Duke see his daughter's value. Otherwise, his killing of Elena's biological father years ago would have been meaningless. 10 years ago, Hugo had locked his brother in an underground dungeon. Though his brother couldn't even stand, his gaze was still piercing sharp. This greatly annoyed Hugo. But considering that at age 13, his brother had saved his life, he promised to always respect Linus as his brother. The two were fraternal twins, but one never smiled while the other always wore a gentle smile. Such hateful looks were truly rare. But today, he brought his dear brother some good news. Your daughter has been born. Linus shed tears of excitement, constantly thanking God. He said if it was a daughter, they'd call her Elena. He had promised Stacy. Hugo chuckled. In the Rhodes family, anyone other than the heir was forbidden from continuing the bloodline, but Linus had fallen in love with a maid named Stacy from a fallen noble family. Linus had even violated family rules by eloping with Stacy. They were only caught because Stacy was pregnant. After capturing Linus, Hugo broke both his legs. He also threatened Stacy that if she ran away, he would kill Linus. Stacy had no choice but to stay at the Duke's mansion with her pregnant belly, and when Linus learned his wife had decided to stay, he too gave up trying to escape. Learning that Stacy had given birth to a baby girl with perfect golden eyes, Hugo ordered Stacy's death. He wanted to raise Elena as his own daughter, so eliminating her biological parents was best. So he proposed to Linus. I'll spare your daughter's life. If she becomes my daughter in the future, no one will know the child is from a branch family. But brother must die. Linus smiled and said good without hesitation. Hugo rose and drew his sword, personally eliminating the final threat. Before dying, Linus, blood in his mouth, still thanked Hugo without regret. Hugo didn't understand his brother, only thought him foolish. Eventually, Elena became his daughter. It was said golden eyes could not only read emotions, but also foresee the future of this world. However, the child he raised personally disappointed him completely. Elena had no abilities and no desires. Even when Hugo repeatedly pushed her to the brink of death, she still let her father torment her. So when he heard Sirius say the only reward he wanted was to have Elena accompany him while studying, the Duke agreed with satisfaction. He had harmed his own brother to steal Elena for 10 years. He finally felt that deed hadn't been in vain. That day, Elena had a strange dream. She cried for a long time in her sleep. Elena was surprised that Sirius wanted to study with her. Then Sirius stammered, "Elena, to be honest, I can't read." Then he launched a fierce offensive. "Will you teach me?" Elena wanted to refuse, but was struck down by the beautiful person's attack. She secretly swore in her heart that today would definitely be the last time. She would never meddle in others' affairs again. Sirius said sweetly, "Miss Elena." Elena's jaw dropped. "What did you call me? From now on you're going to teach me to read, so don't use honorifics with me anymore either." Before Elena could react, Sirius was about to start Elena's tutoring. Elena stopped him in time. "This makes me very uncomfortable." Sirius hung his head dejectedly. After successfully manipulating Elena's heart, he looked at her with deep affection again. "Then how about we both drop the honorifics?" When soft tactics didn't work, he went hard. "You choose. Either only I honor you as teacher, or we both drop honorifics." Elena had to compromise. "Then Sirius, let's start class." He immediately smiled happily. By evening, when class ended, Elena sighed. He was truly protagonist. Teach him once and he can apply it broadly. Elena began to wonder, why was he suddenly being so good to her? Sirius's answer was simple. "Because you're good to me too." Elena was stunned, her eyes full of heartache. The next second she was about to object, but Sirius advised her not to deny it. Because he knew everything. Elena quickly changed the subject. "Honestly, I don't teach very well, but fortunately you're smart." Sirius said it didn't matter. This lesson made Sirius even more certain his thinking was right. "You taught me very seriously, so you're also someone with ambitions." Find the right direction in the future and you can definitely become useful too, because useless people die quickly. Elena couldn't help feeling afraid. Sure enough, Sirius wasn't a normal person even at this time. Sirius handed Elena a book, then turned back saying, "See you tomorrow then." There was a note in the book. The note read, "Teach me to read and write tomorrow too." Elena looked at the note and chuckled. The handwriting was truly terrible. Back in her room, Elena's thoughts were chaotic. Looking at Sirius's recent attitude, it seemed he already considered her an ally, but she had no confidence in surviving beside the male lead. What could she do to make Sirius give up on her? Then there was only one answer: become a useless person. Elena thought this was a perfect plan. The next day, Elena proactively invited Sirius to play house. The boy was indeed flustered, but different from her expectations. He didn't even know what playing house was. Elena patiently explained, "It's a game where children can imitate adults, acting out an ordinary married couple's life." Sirius said he understood, but I don't want to fight with you. Sirius had heard the maids chatting. What they talked about most was married couples fighting. Thinking about it now, Sirius never had a chance to get along well with his parents, so Elena got up to demonstrate. She drew a line with a stick. "Inside here is our home. Also, we're a couple who respect each other." Then Elena pushed Sirius out. "Now you play a husband who just came home." Seeing his stiff appearance, Elena smiled with satisfaction. At this rate, the plan was half successful, so Elena smiled at Sirius. "You're home, darling." As soon as the words fell, Sirius's face turned completely red. He twisted and turned, avoiding her gaze. When Elena made dinner for Sirius, unexpectedly, Sirius actually ate it. At bedtime, Elena told him not to talk. When they woke up, today's house game would be over. Sirius said regretfully, "It's a bit of a pity. Playing house is interesting. I want to play again tomorrow, darling." Hearing this, Elena's heart couldn't stop beating. When she called him darling, she felt nothing herself. It must be because this guy would harm over 10 fiancés in the future. Sirius gripped her hand tightly somehow. He felt very good. Elena decided to change her plan. Starting tomorrow, playing house would be forbidden. What a coincidence. The next day, Sirius was called away by the Duke. Elena took this chance to go to the second room. She didn't expect Joseph's injuries to be worse than she thought. Elena asked, "So why did you have to oppose Sirius? Is making yourself suffer your hobby?" This time she came to hear her brother's apology, "So are you wrong or not?" Joseph quietly said sorry. Elena asked if he was sincere. Her brother turned away proudly. "Even if I sincerely apologize, you won't forgive me." Elena asked back, "Why wouldn't I forgive you? You've already been punished anyway." Joseph turned around. "Really? If I sincerely apologize, you'll forgive me and spare my wrist?" Seeing Joseph crying and begging for forgiveness, outwardly calm, Elena was startled inside. Elena had always thought he was just a little devil, but seeing him so frightened now, she suddenly felt he was just a child too. So Elena said seriously, "If you sincerely apologize, I will forgive you." After hearing this, the second brother cried even harder. Was he that afraid of having his wrist broken by Sirius? Right, if he really became disabled, he'd definitely be the first to be abandoned by father. The second brother cried while complaining, "Clearly this doesn't benefit you at all, yet you still help me. You're such a fool." Elena punched Joseph directly on the head. "You seem to misunderstand. I'm forgiving you not for your sake but for mine. Though I really dislike you, I can't casually ruin your life. Anyway, be careful in the future. I won't easily forgive you next time. Understand?" Joseph said, "I understand. Sorry, Elena." Fortunately, his second apology felt somewhat sincere to her. After this was over, Elena came to the little home she'd arranged with Sirius. Hearing Elena's voice, Sirius immediately turned around. He was practicing writing while waiting for Elena. "Come read this quickly." Elena was puzzled. How did he write his own name wrong? Having no choice, Elena demonstrated once for him. But strangely, Sirius could write much harder characters so well. She asked Sirius, "You wrote this wrong on purpose, didn't you?" Sirius admitted openly, because he wanted to see Elena write his name. Through her golden eyes that could see through others' emotions, Elena actually discovered Sirius felt very happy right now. Sirius suddenly moved closer to Elena. The next second, he kissed Elena on the cheek. Elena stood there stunned. Sirius asked, "So what should we play today? I still want to play house." Sirius's nonchalant attitude made Elena even more nervous. Elena kept chanting in her mind, "Stay clear-headed, must act according to plan." So Elena suggested, "How about we observe ants today?" She coaxed and tricked Sirius into thinking this was fun. But Elena thought to herself, this time he'll definitely find it boring. So they did it. The two followed closely behind the ant colony. Following them led to the ant nest. Elena suddenly realized something was wrong. How was she enjoying this too? Sirius also found it very interesting. At this rate, the plan would fail again, so Elena quickly changed the subject. "What did father want with you this morning?" Sirius replied, Teacher said he had business in the imperial capital and asked me to see him off. Sirius carefully watched Elena's expression, afraid she'd be sad. But Elena didn't want to go see him off at all. Anyway, she successfully changed the subject. Elena announced the game was over. Sirius asked, "Going back so soon?" Elena felt he was more clingy today. It really softened her heart. "Let's come out and play again tomorrow." The two little ones walked into the forest. Something on the tree seemed to be glowing. She walked closer to observe, reached inside to feel around for a while. There was actually a necklace inside. Someone must have hidden it. She opened the locket. The photo actually showed a woman who looked exactly like Elena, named Stacy. Elena suddenly remembered something. She ran desperately toward the shrine. The closer she got, the more nervous she became. They came to a tombstone. Stacy. She was Elena's mother. It was said that as soon as she gave birth to Elena, she died of puerperal fever. The current duke's legitimate wife died soon after giving birth to the sixth son, so everyone called Elena an illegitimate child. The maids also spread rumors without restraint, but those maids soon disappeared without a trace, so only these rumors remained about her mother. Elena had also asked Father if Mother had any other family, but Father told her mother was an orphan, but the mother in the locket clearly had a surname. An orphan couldn't possibly have a surname, Sirius thought. This woman must be her mother. They looked very alike, especially this round face shape. Elena blushed. She tried hard to calm her racing heart. "You're right, this person is my mother. I can feel it." Seeing Elena's happy smile, Sirius also unconsciously smiled. Elena gripped his hand tightly. "If I ever leave this place, I'll definitely go find Mother. But I can't now, because the Duke hasn't given up on her golden eyes." Sirius also told the girl very seriously, "Then I'll help you leave this place." Elena was stunned for a long time after hearing this. She couldn't help but moisten her eyes. How strange, she clearly wanted to stay far away from him. But now being so close, she felt very comfortable. Several months later, the Duke returned to the mansion. He immediately summoned all the children, and specifically named Sirius and Elena. "Starting next month, formal classes will begin. You two go greet him together." Previously, Father had always looked at her with disgust, but just now she couldn't see any emotion at all. Was it her imagination? Then the Duke dismissed everyone, leaving only Elena. Even Sirius had to go out. Elena didn't dare look up at him. They hadn't spoken in a long time. Father suddenly became gentle with her. "Poor child, I'll give you back everything you deserve in the future. Elena, come live in the main hall." Her golden eyes could see through all emotions in the world. The Duke said he loved her, but was surrounded by murderous intent, so she would never be grateful to the Duke. Instead, hoped the family would be destroyed by the male lead soon. Elena didn't think further. She got up and ran to the next room. The moment she saw Sirius, the gloom on her face was swept away. She ran to the table, taking the milk Sirius handed her and sitting down to enjoy it. Then Elena noticed Sirius had been watching her. Sirius smiled at Elena. "Your clothes suit you very well, very cute." Elena embarrassedly scratched her head. But Sirius wanted nothing more than to hug Elena tightly right now and ruffle her hair wildly. Sirius was too lost in thought. Elena called him several times with no response. "Starting tomorrow, we'll be in class together, so I'm asking if you're worried." Sirius only felt excited about attending classes with her. Elena withdrew her concern. Anyway, this world would develop according to the male lead's wishes. Seeing Elena yawn several times, Sirius suggested, "How about we sleep here together tonight? I just think you don't want to go back to that room to sleep." Elena rubbed her eyes. It was too quiet there. She indeed didn't like it much. Finally, they decided to play a camping game here. The two little ones made beds on the floor like this. Elena couldn't help but look forward to it. What would a real camping night sky look like? Sirius looked back at her. "Let's go real camping tomorrow." Elena agreed. They looked forward to tomorrow together. At this moment, Elena had a strange premonition. Her plan seemed quite unnecessary. Sirius wouldn't abandon her just because she became a useless person. 4 years later, Elena had become increasingly beautiful. She had grown into a graceful beauty. She declined her second brother's invitation because she had a date with Sirius. Elena saw Sirius waiting for her in the garden from far away. Hearing Elena call him, Sirius immediately turned and responded with a smile. The two used hand signals to ask if each other had prepared everything. Then they sat on the living room sofa, Elena happily eating ice cream. Just as Elena was eating happily, Sirius complained, "Only at times like this do you run so fast." Elena laughed. "I was afraid the ice cream would melt. If I'd known it was strawberry ice cream earlier, I would have run even faster." Sirius asked what the Duke had said to her. Elena said it was nothing, same as usual. Ever since the Duke suddenly changed his attitude 4 years ago, she'd lived the life a proper young lady should have. The best food, clothes, and everything else. Even if she wanted the moon, the Duke would give it to her. The Duke seemed to return to loving her like when she was small, as if those years of abandoning her had never existed. One day, the Duke even said she was the only child he cherished. Though he looked regretful, what she saw through her golden eyes was only annoyance. But she didn't care because from the beginning, Father had never reflected. He hadn't even said a single sorry to her. He just blindly gave material things, occasionally saying some manipulative words. So the time her brothers and sisters dreamed of, dining alone with the Duke, was just like sitting on pins and needles for her. At times like this, only the ice cream Sirius prepared for her could help her digest. Thinking of this, Elena turned to thank Sirius, only to see Sirius with his arms crossed, looking displeased. He pouted, sulking the whole time. Was he unhappy about that matter? Elena took his arm and explained. He really didn't say anything, just the usual greetings. If it were the old Sirius, he would definitely ask her with a cute expression. But the current Sirius directly pulled his arm away, saying coldly, "I know," completely a rebellious teenager. Come to think of it, he had indeed grown up a lot, and his looks too, clearly the makings of a peerless beauty. Sirius had also grown much taller, though they ate the same things. Elena suddenly asked, "Sirius, did you grow taller again?" Sirius said, "We just saw each other yesterday, do you think it's possible?" Elena took the chance to change the subject. "Then let's measure quickly." So she pulled Sirius to stand back to back to measure height. Unexpectedly, she was a whole head shorter than him. Clearly, when they first met, he was much smaller than her. And at that time, something big happened that nearly cost them their lives. That day, they were just comparing heights in the reception room. In the memory, Elena said to Sirius, "I always feel like we're at the same eye level lately. How could you secretly grow taller behind my back?" Sirius comforted Elena. "I don't think I've grown taller." But Elena felt it was a pity. She clearly knew Sirius would grow taller than her someday, but she wanted to look at cute little Sirius a bit longer. So she pretended to be angry, hands on her hips, saying to Sirius, "I'm still taller than you now." Sirius smiled and agreed. "I know. Let's do homework first." Elena was about to say something when there was a knock at the door. She excitedly ran to open it. Was it time for snacks already today? She told Sirius not to do homework yet. After entering, the maid bowed respectfully, then placed snacks on the table. Sirius stared intently at the maid, suddenly asking, "I've never seen you before." The maid said she was a servant from when the tutor was in the imperial capital. Sirius said he understood, then dismissed the maid. Then Sirius reached for a snack. Suddenly, Elena knocked the snack from Sirius's hand. Elena said nervously, "No, you can't eat this." Sirius immediately realized the snacks had been tampered with. This time, Elena had blindly helped Sirius again, her heart pounding. But through her golden eyes, Elena had seen the strong hostility on that maid. Perhaps she was sent by the Emperor to kill Sirius. Thinking of this, she instinctively stopped him. Sirius was already used to such things. Elena got up and took Sirius's hand, apologizing for hitting his hand just now. Sirius comforted Elena, saying it was okay. Sirius suggested they stay here first. That maid had definitely drugged the snacks. If they walked out now acting like nothing happened, they'd definitely be suspected. Sirius suddenly looked up intently at the girl. "Elena, we're on the same side, right?" "Of course." He smiled slightly. "Trust me, Elena, I absolutely won't let any of my people get hurt." Elena was stunned for a moment, then nodded repeatedly. She tried hard to recall the original plot, but the male lead's childhood story only occupied a tiny part of the beginning. She only remembered Sirius was nearly assassinated, and not just once or twice. Sirius's voice suddenly rang out, "Elena, could you let go of my arm?" Elena stepped back in panic. The novel and current situation had one very important difference. He now had her as a burden beside him. Sirius told her to hide a few cookies first, pretending they had already eaten some. Elena nodded obediently. At least she couldn't hinder him. Soon, Sirius found 2 large dolls. He arranged them on the sofa and covered them with blankets to disguise them as themselves. Then the 2 hid in the wardrobe. Sirius told Elena not to move. He would find a chance to run out later, and not to make a sound until he called her out. After an unknown amount of time, the maid walked right in. As expected, she had a knife hidden behind her. But when she pulled back the blanket and found 2 dolls inside, she realized she'd been tricked. Sirius chanted a spell. The entire room was plunged into darkness. Elena couldn't see anything. Red murderous intent gradually spread to her feet. And it was from 2 people. She could clearly distinguish the owners of the 2 forces. A strange thought suddenly popped into her head. Why don't I just step on it? She also wanted to do something for the boy. With one step, the smoke instantly disappeared. The sounds outside gradually quieted. She quietly poked her head out to look, only to find herself face to face with Sirius. Elena was startled. She scratched her head embarrassedly. Sirius was also startled. Even his speech became stuttered. Everything Elena could see was smashed, except the assassin was nowhere to be found. Sirius told her the assassin had fallen out the window, should be dead already. But his emotions couldn't fool her golden eyes. Why was Sirius lying? The blood on the floor proved the assassin hadn't died from the fall. Sirius fearfully covered his ears. I saw the assassin get distracted, so I closed my eyes and pushed her down. All the tables were smashed by her. It's all because she swung her dagger around too wildly. It's all her fault for being too fierce. Elena didn't understand, but still gripped his hand and praised. Sirius, you did right. Such a small child could actually kill someone and wipe away all traces so cleanly. This scene should be eerie and terrifying. But no one had the right to blame Sirius. Elena thanked Sirius. Sirius, thank you for protecting me. You were scared too, weren't you? Hearing this, Sirius blushed. Then he lowered his head. He stepped forward and hugged Elena tightly. Yes, I was scared, Elena. I hope you— No, it's nothing. Sirius swallowed the words that came to his lips. How scared must he have been at that time? But he was quite cute then. Elena hugged Sirius's arm. Are you over being angry about what happened earlier? Sirius still pulled his arm away. Don't get so close. Elena noticed he'd been keeping distance from her lately. If she'd known he'd become like this, she should have hugged little Sirius more before. Elena put her hands on her hips. Sirius, if you keep being so cold to me, I'm really going to leave. But what Elena got was Sirius saying, suit yourself. Elena began to feel sad. She turned and left in a huff. Sirius heard the door slam shut hard. Elena's footsteps grew more and more distant. Sirius breathed a sigh of relief. His face was red to the ears. He was going crazy. He knew his behavior was stupid. But every time Elena did those things to him, it drove him insane. His heart felt like something was wrong with it. Why was he like this? But he didn't want to admit it, because this kind of feeling wouldn't get any response. Though he was angry, this was also the truth. How nice it would be if he could be a bit more obtuse and not notice. Maybe it was that day, when the Duke gave him a special mission, that he began to notice his own heart. From his first year entering the Duke's mansion, he had participated in monster subjugation battles. Later, he received a simple mission. If there was anything special about it, it was that Elena also participated in that mission. Elena put on his clothes, smiling as she pulled him outside. Sirius felt strange. This feeling was subtle. Elena said she wanted to wear clothes convenient for moving, so Sirius just lent her his own small clothes that no longer fit. He hadn't felt anything at the time, but seeing her actually wearing his clothes, why could his gaze never leave her again? Elena hugged Sirius's arm and complained, You don't know how long it's been since I went out. Sirius was still deceiving himself. This current flutter should just be infected by Elena's happiness. But strangely, why would the Duke strictly forbid Elena from going out? Even she herself seemed not to know the reason. At that time, Sirius had volunteered to bring Elena along, and the Duke had agreed readily. What was such a usually rigorous person plotting? But seeing Elena so happy, this was enough. It should be fine. They had just set out, when the guards all stared at the young lady. They were seeing the Duke's especially beloved daughter for the first time, hearing Elena laughing and chatting with other men. Sirius felt inexplicably annoyed. He couldn't help warning the accompanying knights, We're not here to play. But he turned to Elena with a gentle voice, I'll catch you a rabbit later. Sirius sighed inwardly. They were like they'd come for a spring outing. But it didn't matter. At least for Elena, this would be a beautiful memory. But the weather that had been sunny just moments ago suddenly started raining in such harsh weather. Though Sirius didn't want to see Elena disappointed. For safety's sake, he could only send Elena back first. This place hadn't seen monsters for decades. Elena shouldn't be in any danger. One guard should be enough for her. Just then, strange movement came from the distance. Sirius ordered the soldiers to spread out, and told Elena to come to his side. Elena turned and dismounted, casually sitting in Sirius's arms. Only then did Sirius realize how much their size difference had grown. Sirius could encircle the girl's waist with just one arm. He tried hard to concentrate, finally catching the movement. In an instant, his purple eyes faintly glowed gold. Now, endless vines surged up from the ground. Sirius gripped the reins tightly. He reminded Elena to hold on tight. After finding the monster's weak point, he had to throw his sword to finish it in one strike, though it wasn't difficult. But if he wanted to draw his sword, he'd have to release either the reins or the hand holding Elena. If he released the reins, they might both be thrown from the horse. There was only one chance. He had to kill the monster in one strike. He hurled his sword at the monster. But suddenly he noticed Elena had released her grip on the reins, and Sirius froze. Had he confirmed it? Whether Elena was holding the reins properly? The next second, both fell down the slope together. Sirius tightly protected Elena, using his own body as a cushion. In the blink of an eye, both disappeared from everyone's sight. their consciousness gradually blurred. After an unknown time, Sirius was the first to wake up. He immediately looked at Elena in his arms. "Elena, wake up quickly," under his urgent calling. Elena drowsily sat up and said to Sirius, "I'm fine." Sirius couldn't stop feeling guilty and remorseful. Elena was already timid, and she must be terrified now. He had wanted to give her a complete and happy day, but Elena smiled brightly instead. "We look quite funny right now," she said, then got up and dusted herself off. Sirius was puzzled. Why did she act as if nothing had happened? They had almost died just moments ago. Sirius asked worriedly, "Are you really okay? If you're feeling unwell, please tell me." But Sirius hadn't expected that Elena's trust in him was far more steadfast than he had imagined. Elena said to Sirius, "With you by my side, what do I have to worry about?" She reached out her hand to Sirius. "Come on, take my hand. Let's quickly find somewhere to shelter from the rain." Sirius grasped Elena's hand firmly. "All right, I understand." The two walked under a tree to take shelter from the rain. Sirius stole a glance at Elena. "You're really not hurt, are you?" Elena waved her hand dismissively. "I'm really fine. Look, I don't even have a scratch on me. It seemed they would have to spend the night here." Elena said we're doomed with her mouth, but her expression showed no signs of anxiety at all. Sirius felt happy being trusted by Elena like this. Sirius murmured softly to Elena, "But in the distant future, when we look back, these difficult experiences will also be part of our memories, won't they?" But what puzzled Sirius was that Elena didn't respond to him. So Sirius asked again, "Elena, don't you think so?" Elena scratched her head awkwardly. "Well, that may be true, but memories need to be remembered continuously to remain memories." Sirius noticed that Elena always excluded herself when speaking, as if her future didn't include herself at all. Yet Sirius's own vision of the future had Elena's presence everywhere, and Elena always spoke of him as someone who would leave someday. Sirius said excitedly, "This is our first time spending the night outdoors together. How could I possibly forget?" Elena suddenly realized at this moment, and said equally excitedly, "Yes! This is my first time spending the night outdoors too." Sirius's original anger was instantly extinguished. He had no reason to be angry. Sirius could only tell Elena awkwardly, "Anyway, you better remember this well." Elena said happily, "Then I definitely won't forget." Elena smiled cheerfully. "If we don't freeze to death here, that is." Sirius turned to Elena in shock. He had forgotten that Elena's constitution wasn't particularly good. He suddenly cupped Elena's face, and only then discovered her lips were purple, and her body was terrifyingly cold. At this moment, Elena gradually began to feel drowsy again. Sirius's heart skipped a beat. He pulled Elena's shoulders toward him, so she could lean against him for warmth. Sirius's body temperature hadn't dropped, thanks to his divine bloodline. But as the night deepened, the temperature in the forest grew even colder. Elena's body temperature showed no signs of rising. Clearly, the two of them had embraced countless times, since they were children. But now, for some reason, Sirius's heart wouldn't stop racing. He could only hold Elena tighter, yet found his heart still pounding like a drum. He even began to worry that his heartbeat would wake Elena. But he was holding Elena now only to share some body heat with her. It was forced by circumstances, nothing significant. Yet throughout this entire night, Sirius remained on edge. His inadvertent glance back made him even more aware that his feelings for Elena had long since changed in nature. His feelings for her could no longer be as pure as before. The tighter he held Elena, the more his heart raced with joy and restlessness. How ridiculous. He clearly knew that Elena's vision of the future had no place for him, yet he couldn't help but be moved. It was like meeting his first love only to be immediately rejected by her. No wonder that at some point he had stopped daring to casually have physical contact with Elena. Now thinking about it, perhaps his falling in love with Elena was inevitable. Ever since he came to this twisted family, Elena had been his everything. He was willing to give everything to Elena. He hadn't expected that this would include his heart as well. "Elena, what should I do with you?" Actually, Sirius already had an answer in his heart. He wanted Elena, and Elena must accept him too. But how should he go about it to make Elena accept him? The next day after returning home, Elena caught a severe cold, while Sirius seemed to have developed a fever. This surprised Elena greatly. Unexpectedly, after they both recovered and met again, Sirius suddenly underwent a complete personality change. He became cold and distant. Even when Elena reached out first to reconcile, he remained indifferent. Elena thought about how Sirius's emotions had been off lately. Elena's golden eyes could read anyone's emotions, but these past few months she had been unable to see through Sirius's emotions. She couldn't decipher their meaning. Ever since the two of them spent that night outdoors, Sirius's condition had become strange. Originally, Sirius's emotions were pure and clear, but after that night, his emotions suddenly became mixed with gloomy colors, containing unease, anxiety, worry, tension, and so on. These were all negative emotions. Did Sirius now feel annoyed whenever he saw her? Elena had thought that Sirius still liked her at least a little, even just a bit. But now, he seemed not to like her at all. She seemed no longer to be Sirius's only one. Why had things become like this? After thinking hard for several months, she finally reached a conclusion. Sirius was going through puberty. This would explain everything. The symptoms of adolescent puberty were indeed irritability and anxiety. Elena carefully observed Sirius's emotional fluctuations, and actually most of them were still happy emotional colors. So they were just temporarily not on the same path. As long as some time passed, their relationship would definitely return to how it was before. Originally today, Sirius had prepared ice cream for her as usual, but she hadn't answered Sirius's question properly and had just focused on eating. The more she thought about it, the more she felt it might be her fault. She had lived for so long, how could she still be petty with Sirius? She didn't want to create distance with Sirius over such a small matter. It wasn't because Sirius was the male protagonist who would one day destroy her family, but because they were close friends who had grown up together. And he was also the only person she treasured, although someday they would go their separate ways. Elena felt there was no need for them to start drifting apart so early. Thinking this, Elena ran to Sirius's room. She pushed open the door and saw that Sirius was still in his room, though he seemed to be asleep. Elena carefully entered the room and asked softly, "Sirius, are you asleep?" Sirius answered with his eyes closed, "No." Elena smiled at this and she hurried over, then whooshed and lay down beside Sirius. Then the two looked at each other, and the next second both couldn't help but laugh out loud. Sirius apologized first. "Sorry, Elena." Elena immediately frowned. "I was supposed to apologize to you first. You stole my chance to apologize. I'm angry now." Sirius apologized again indulgently. "Sorry again, Elena." Elena forgave Sirius, and she hugged Sirius's arm, chattering in his ear. But Sirius wasn't listening at all, instead being very conscious of their proximity. Elena's sudden upward glance made Sirius blush even more. At this moment, Elena also saw through her golden eyes Sirius's complex feelings, so she tactfully turned over, moving away from Sirius. He was going through puberty after all. She needed to be careful. Sirius asked, "What did you say you forgot to tell me?" Only then did Elena suddenly remember. She said Father had mentioned that the heir selection test would take place soon. Although Sirius wasn't a Rhodes inheritance candidate, Father had also asked him to prepare for the test. It seemed he wanted to use this to test Sirius's limits. Elena felt sorry for Sirius. Although this plot was meant to embellish Sirius's future, for him personally, his fate was not optimistic but rather cruel. Although he didn't want to participate, he couldn't just not do it because he didn't want to, Sirius muttered. "I'll have to face even more difficult things in the future anyway. I must overcome this level of difficulty." Elena was startled. Even more difficult things? Sirius had said that someday he would reclaim his rightful position. This also included revenge against his half-brother. That's right, Sirius was born this way. As long as he wanted something, he had to get it to be satisfied. But Sirius didn't want to tell Elena what the more difficult things were for now. Elena chuckled. "No one in this world understands you better than I do." At this moment, Sirius asked, "Elena, why are you sitting farther and farther away?" Before Elena could react, Sirius directly grabbed her wrist. With a thump, both of them lay on the sofa together. Sirius asked with a red face, "Why have you been moving farther away from me since earlier? You need to stay by my side." Lying there, Sirius slowly closed his eyes. Elena took the opportunity to secretly snuggle into Sirius's embrace. She couldn't help but reminisce about when they were children. Sirius used to sleep with her just like this. Back then, Sirius had smiled and said to Elena, "When we grow up, I want to stay with you like this every day too." Elena was completely captivated by his cuteness. She didn't know when he had become her beloved. Elena never would have imagined that her future self would be lying intimately shoulder to shoulder with the male protagonist who killed her entire clan. Elena was no longer as afraid of him as before. Instead, she was more afraid of Sirius leaving her, and of Sirius forgetting her. Yes, when that time came, even if she wanted to see Sirius again, she wouldn't be able to. So she had to take this chance to look at Sirius enough. She felt that today's Sirius seemed particularly radiant, perhaps because of the sunlight hitting his silver hair. Sirius suddenly spoke at this moment. "Do you like what you're seeing now?" Hearing this, Elena jumped up in fright, then hid away shyly. She saw Sirius with one eye open, looking at Elena indulgently. "You've been staring at my face since earlier, haven't you?" Elena, whose little thoughts had been exposed, immediately turned bright red. The two went back and forth with their banter. And finally, Elena, who was in the wrong, couldn't out-argue Sirius, so she huffily turned away and ignored him. Sirius clearly knew that Elena had been fascinated by his face since childhood. He had heard her secretly saying him cute many times before. Even now, Elena often stared at his face. Sirius felt truly fortunate. This meant he had successfully grown up according to Elena's preferences. He suddenly said, "Elena, about that test you mentioned." If I can pass it successfully, will you grant me one wish? Elena was puzzled. Why are you suddenly talking about wishes? Sirius indicated that the wish was related to her. Elena stared straight at Sirius. She felt she needed to think carefully before answering, so she tentatively asked what he wanted. Sirius said it wouldn't be interesting if he told her now. He told Elena not to worry, he wouldn't make any unreasonable demands. Elena had an ominous feeling, but if she refused, she felt guilty about it. Because Sirius was surrounded not only by happy light, but also some very urgent aura. At this moment, Sirius explained, I just think that having a reward would make me work harder during the test. Isn't that okay? His appearance suggested that compared to the reward the Duke would give him, he wanted Elena's reward more, so Elena finally compromised. Sirius's eyes lit up with excitement. Really? Then it's a deal. Elena hadn't expected him to be so happy. She definitely didn't agree because of that pretty face pleading with her. Elena asked again, but are you really not going to tell me? What wish you want? Sirius said meaningfully, no, it's a secret for now. There were only 7 days left until the heir selection test. The Duke ordered all candidates to change their lifestyle, but he made no demands of Elena alone. Everyone speculated that Elena would be excluded from this test, simply because she was the Duke's extremely beloved daughter. However, Elena would never get used to this kind of treatment, even if she received it for a lifetime. At this moment, Brother Joseph suddenly appeared and asked Elena, what are you doing standing there alone in a daze? The Sunday brother meant to show concern, but it came out as harsh words. Elena immediately got up. She was about to leave, when Brother Joseph used his domineering way to make Elena stay. Elena was speechless. Joseph, there are less than 7 days until the heir test. How do you still have the leisure to come here? Joseph found his sister's way of addressing him particularly grating. You should call me Brother Joseph. Elena thought to herself. She had treated him this way, yet he still didn't get angry. Could it be that he really wasn't here to pick a fight with her this time? Then what was he doing here? Seeing that Elena refused to call him Brother Joseph, he helplessly scratched his head. I came today to be your big brother for once. After that, he dismissed the maids and patted the seat beside him, signaling for his sister to come sit. To outsiders, they would look like the most harmonious siblings. Joseph whispered to Elena, for the next week, you must not do anything that draws attention. Elena felt he wasn't threatening her like before. It really sounded like advice. Joseph repeatedly warned, don't get too close to Sirius either. Elena didn't understand why, but her brother only told her, just listen to your big brother. Especially in front of Courtney, you need to be extra careful. From today on, no matter what happens, you need to stay far away. Do you understand? Elena knew better than anyone how much Sister Courtney hated her. Because her situation had suddenly changed dramatically, as siblings competing for inheritance rights, they definitely wouldn't accept their father's unfair treatment. But between these two, Joseph was still easier to get along with, because regarding their father's sudden favoritism toward her, Joseph only showed straightforward jealousy, but no hatred. Seeing his sister continuously spacing out, Joseph loudly reminded her, can't you listen to your brother properly? Answer me quickly. Elena found it strange and asked, why are you suddenly being so kind to warn me? Could it be that in your heart you actually love me very much as your sister? Joseph stammered his denial. Absolutely not that kind of thing. Though her brother was being sincere verbally, the shy emotions surrounding him had already exposed his inner feelings. Ever since he had bullied Elena, and she forgave him, he would come looking for Elena from time to time. Joseph crossed his arms and said sunderly, if you keep talking nonsense like this, I'm leaving. Elena chuckled. No, wait, don't be like that. But why do I have to avoid Sirius too? Joseph hesitated, pondering for a long time before speaking. He turned his head away from Elena, because Courtney really doesn't like you being close to Sirius. But Elena observed through her golden eyes that Brother Joseph was lying. He was deliberately hiding the real reason. But if she continued asking, she felt he really would leave. So Elena had to pretend to drop it. In the Empire, once you reached 20, you could officially inherit the family. But Sister Courtney had yet to gain their father's recognition. At a time like this, the Duke's special treatment of Elena made Sister Courtney even more unable to stand Elena. Seeing his sister looking worried, Joseph asked what she planned to do. Elena decided to proceed as planned. For the next week, she would try to avoid her sister as much as possible. Although it sounded frustrating and cowardly, there was no choice. This was her wisest option at the moment. The Duke had explicitly forbidden her from learning any skills, so she had no chance to learn swordsmanship or build up her body's tolerance to toxins. But Elena had no intention of staying away from Sirius. She directly ignored Brother Joseph's advice. Joseph, unable to persuade his sister, sighed. I clearly warned you to stay away from Sirius. As soon as he finished speaking, the person in question appeared behind him. Sirius's eyes instantly filled with killing intent. Who did you say should stay away from me? The sudden appearance of Sirius startled both siblings. Joseph quickly got up and denied, "It's not what you heard." But Sirius pressed even harder on Joseph's shoulder. Joseph was on the verge of tears, and Elena had to step in to explain. She gently took Sirius's hand. "Sirius, let's let go first and then talk, okay?" Sirius stared intently at Elena. He pondered for a long time, then locked his gaze on Joseph again. Then he smiled contemptuously. "Then let's have a chat." Sirius said he loved to chat, but the aura around him was subtly unsettling. Elena pulled Sirius's hand. "Sit down first." Sirius immediately lost his temper and obediently did as Elena said. Joseph, who was standing to the side, hesitated greatly. Then threw out, "Have a pleasant time." And before Sirius could react, he ran away. Seeing Sirius about to chase after him, Elena immediately tackled him. She said to Joseph, "Don't worry about it, leave this to me, you should go quickly." Seeing brother Joseph starting to hesitate again, Elena told him, "If you're grateful to me, then don't have any accidents during the test and come back safely." Joseph said, "I will definitely defeat everyone and return in glory." After saying this, Joseph hurried away. Having such a foolish brother, Elena was the one who suffered. Right now, she had more pressing matters. Elena saw that Sirius was pinned tightly under her, and she immediately bounced away and apologized to Sirius. Completely oblivious to the blush spreading across his face, Elena began explaining at length, hoping Sirius wouldn't misunderstand. She, like him, didn't want to leave each other. Unexpectedly, Sirius suddenly got up. He covered his flushed face and stammered, "I understand. Let's talk about this next time." Then Sirius turned and strode away without looking back. Elena was surprised. He left so suddenly that she didn't even have time to try to make him stay. But the color of his emotions seemed different from anger. It seemed more like shyness. Elena sighed deeply. Although her eyes could see emotions, she just couldn't understand Sirius's emotions. Adolescent boys really were hard to understand. After that incident, she didn't see Sirius all day. In the morning, Sirius said he had no appetite and didn't come to breakfast. When it was time for their shared classes, Sirius said he needed to prepare for training and wouldn't attend. At lunch, by the time Elena reached the dining hall, Sirius had already finished eating and left. Elena knew Sirius was definitely avoiding her on purpose because of yesterday's incident. At this point, she had to be impolite too. In the hallway, Elena shouted Sirius's name loudly. Just then, she ran into brother Joseph. Joseph advised Elena to return to her room quickly, to avoid running into sister Courtney. Helplessly, Elena had to return to her room first. As soon as she looked up, she discovered someone standing at her door. That person was Sirius. Elena was going crazy. As soon as she saw Sirius's face, she couldn't get angry no matter what. Seeing Sirius's ears drooping slightly made Elena even more frustrated. Sirius lowered his gaze and apologized softly. "Sorry, Elena. I didn't know how to face you, so I could only avoid you first. But thinking about it myself, I also felt this was wrong." Sirius didn't dare look directly at Elena. This made the atmosphere around them awkward. Elena sighed. "Although I don't know what you did to wrong me. The fact that you came to find me on your own makes everything okay. I forgive you. Because for me, what hurt me most was you avoiding me." Elena's unconditional forgiveness made Sirius feel even more ashamed. And this momentary emotional fluctuation from Sirius was captured by her golden eyes. Although she could read everyone's emotions, Elena alone didn't understand Sirius's love. When they both looked up and their eyes met, Sirius's expression seemed like he had something to say to Elena. Just as Elena was anticipating what he might say, Sirius only said flatly, "Actually, I don't have anything particular to say." Elena was dumbfounded. She had just seen such intense emotional fluctuations from him, yet he said he had nothing to say. Now he didn't even blink when lying. In the past, he would have looked at her anxiously, not knowing what to do. Elena was amazed at when he had become such a good actor. Elena leaned very close to Sirius. "Could it be that you're dissatisfied with me about something?" Sirius reached out his hand and pressed it on her head. "What could I possibly be dissatisfied with about you? You're so well behaved." Although Elena's hair became messy, the atmosphere between them relaxed considerably. Elena muttered while fixing her hair, "You old fox, trying to get by like this again. I'll let you off this once." Sirius suddenly reflected. "Elena, sometimes you're clever and sharp, sometimes you're like a child. They say Rhodes people are good at reading others' hearts. Are you like that too?" The smile on Elena's face gradually stiffened. The fact that she could read emotions. She had never told anyone about this since childhood, because people usually strongly disliked having their emotions read by others. So she was afraid that if Sirius knew the truth, he would hate her too. While Elena was lost in thought, Sirius interrupted her and apologized. "I misspoke. Actually, you're nothing like the Rhodes people." Elena chuckled and poked Sirius comfortingly. "I'm not angry about that. You don't need to worry too much. But if you still feel guilty about it, then when you feel like talking about it later, secretly tell me what you did wrong." At this moment, there was a knock on the door. The butler personally came to deliver a notice. Originally thinking the Duke wanted to see Sirius, it turned out the butler said he wanted to see Elena instead. Coincidentally, Brother Joseph was also waiting outside the office door along with Elena. Elena saw the emotions seeping from the crack under the door were filled with anger and intensity. She had an ominous premonition. At this moment, Sister Courtney suddenly opened the door and came out of the office. She shouted at Joseph and Elena, "You two, get in here right now!" With the inheritance test imminent, Elena, who could barely survive by relying on Sirius, was recognized by her cold-blooded father to participate in the inheritance test. The Duke said to his 3 children, "If you don't achieve results within a week, you'll stay there forever." At this moment, the man observed through his golden eyes that his 3 children's reactions were all different. Joseph was confused and puzzled. Courtney was furious to the extreme, although he couldn't see through Elena's emotions. She was already trembling with fear. For Elena, this was undoubtedly a death sentence. Seeing the fear in his youngest daughter, the father smiled with satisfaction. He announced then, "The person who achieves the most excellent results in this test will obtain the position of heir." As soon as their father left, Elena was cornered by Courtney. Elena was pressed firmly against the wall by her shoulders, unable to move. She struggled to push the other person away, but this completely triggered Sister Courtney's killing intent. "Everyone says father wants to give you the heir's position, but why do you always look confused?" Courtney had thought that as long as she endured through this year, the heir's position would definitely be hers. No matter how much father favored Elena, she could bear it. She only wanted the power to overwhelm everyone. But now everyone was secretly discussing that the Duke might also give the entire family to Elena. Father pretended to be deaf and mute about this, causing this rumor to spread more and more. Courtney told herself not to care, but what if it was true? What if Elena had known the outcome all along and deliberately spread such rumors? She questioned whether Elena was doing this. Elena firmly shook her head. But the difference in strength and size between her and Courtney was too great. Elena was being pressed by Courtney until she could barely breathe. Tears welled up in her eyes, which made Courtney even angrier. She said to Elena, "Since childhood, you've clung to Sirius's side like a parasite. You ultimately benefited from his influence. You, who were originally nothing, only because Sirius took a liking to you, now have the chance to compete for Rhodes's supreme position. She should have seized that position first, and then occupying the place beside Sirius would have been easy. After all, compared to Elena, she wasn't any different. So she just hadn't discovered Sirius's value early enough." Courtney reached toward Elena. "If it weren't for you." That's right. Courtney grabbed Elena's throat angrily. "As long as you're gone, that position would definitely be mine." Courtney's expression grew more and more deranged. She said to Elena, "Don't you have anything to say? Who gave you permission to ignore me?" Elena's hand trembled as she reached forward. Her tremendous will to survive made her poke her fingers toward Courtney's eyes. Courtney, whose eyes were poked, momentarily loosened her grip on Elena. At this moment, Elena took the opportunity to elbow Courtney. Then, while Courtney fell to the ground, she quickly ran away. This self-defense technique was taught to her by Sirius, but what should she do now? Behind her, Courtney was still shouting, "I'm going to kill you." But Elena's legs were already trembling. She couldn't guarantee she could escape a second time. Just then, Elena accidentally tripped on the carpet, just as Elena was about to fall. At this moment, a pair of large hands opened before her eyes. Elena was caught steadily in someone's arms. "I got you." Hearing the familiar voice, tears glimmered in Elena's eyes. It really was Sirius. Just as Sirius was about to ask Elena what happened, suddenly, he noticed the horrifying state of Elena's neck. Seeing Elena injured, Sirius was grinding his back teeth. He angrily went to find whoever had hurt Elena. While Elena grabbed Sirius's clothes with trembling hands, she was shaking with fear all over. Finally, Elena couldn't hold back her fear and broke down crying from terror. Sirius was startled. He quickly knelt before Elena to comfort her. "All right, I won't go anywhere. I'll stay here with you, okay?" Elena didn't understand why they treated her this way. She hated her father's false kindness toward her, when he clearly hated her more than anyone. She hated that Courtney wanted to kill her without understanding anything about her. She hated everything here. She couldn't stand this place anymore. She wanted to leave here.